All right, I'm going to go over the next parts of the creature guy, just so we can go over the calendar so you can see what the rest of the semester is looking like. We have the 26th, which is today. We have the 28th to work on stuff, the 3rd and the 5th. On Wednesday, I'll go over the rendering part of this. Today, I want to go over how to do the hands and how to do some other stuff that you may want to adjust. I'll do the coloring too, just so you can see that. And then Monday, I'll go over the demo reel, and then everything is due on the 5th. So we should have the creature and the demo reel on the 5th. And then in December, on the 10th, that's when we're going to watch the demo reels. And then 12th is just picking up your stuff. I use it as a grading day. So the semester is going by pretty quick, right? Basically 2 work weeks, including this one, and then we're done. Oh, don't look at January yet. We're not there yet. All right, so this is obviously more near the end stages of where your creature is going to be. I'm going to open up a different version of this. I'm going to use Lightbox Recent, and I think, no. There it is. Okay. So to add the hands inside here, what I did was I just went over to, oops, not that, over to this, and I went to Z-Sphere. It doesn't get rid of your shape. My shape's still right there. It just adds a new one into the mix, okay? And what I want to do is I want to just basically model what I want the hand to look like. Not perfectly, but just kind of rough it out. I started with a Z-Sphere, but you could definitely start off with a cube or a cylinder or however you want to do it. Okay, so I'm going to go here. I'm just going to draw, let's say, another shape. I'll go to my move tool, maybe move this over. That's good. Let me scale this up. So this is basically just like the palm of the hand. I don't know if we can see that very good. Let me turn that on. There we go. A little better. Okay, then I'm going to go back to my edit tool. Draw another shape. So this is the knuckle where the finger is going to come out of the hand. That can probably be scaled down slightly. This will be the finger. And I'll do the same thing again on this one. I'll go back to my edit tool, draw another finger, and then pull it out. And then kind of get these things sized up accordingly. Now, what I don't do in this step is kind of pose the hand. All I'm doing is kind of getting it sized up. In this case, I'm going to do 3 fingers. You could do more fingers, just squeeze them closer together. That's all. There we go. And then I'll throw a thumb on here. Right there, right there. All right, so there's his hand. Maybe I'll pull this one down here. I'm going to do a little bit of posing now. I'm kind of getting the hand into that position. I'm thinking about this as like if I want my hand to be like this, I'm going to put the knuckle where it is right there, and I'm going to put the tip of the finger down here. So it's not going to go straight. I'm going to do these points, and then I'll add the middle ones and then just move them into position, right? So, oops, like so. Same thing there. Just, yeah, that's good. Jump back to this. Go to my draw tool and just start drawing in some knuckles. And you can see how easy that is just to kind of drop those points in there and then move them around. As long as you kind of keep an eye out and roughly the distance of the first one is bigger than the distance of the second one is bigger than the distance of the third one. It's an alien, so you have liberty, right? So it doesn't have to be perfect, but that's the idea. So I'm just dropping in a couple more points. Rotating around to find a good angle, which I don't have, so maybe I'll just rotate this. There we go. There we go. That in. And then you saw I could just rotate too. So if I get it in a good position, I click on that joint, maybe. Oops. I accidentally drew another one way over there, so I'll hit color and I'll hit clear. I accidentally drew a second hand. All right, now I'll go back to the move tool or the rotate tool. Draw. I don't think this tablet's working very good. There we go. Okay, and do the same thing on the thumb. One, two, three. I think that's too many. Let's go knock that one back and pull that one in. There we go. All right, so there's roughly my hand. Look at the position of them. Are they spaced evenly? Maybe this one should come over a little bit more. Oops. I'm going to grab that. Do that. Good. This one's longer than the other ones, so again, you can kind of look at it and adjust accordingly. Maybe this one needs to be scaled down, scaled down. All right, that's good. So then I would hit A, obviously, to do my preview, just like when we created the character. Now this is why it doesn't matter. If I were to start off with a cube, I could have just used those insert cylinders like I showed before and just done everything as a Dynamesh. It doesn't matter. Eventually, it's going to end up as a Dynamesh anyway. It's just a matter of getting your base shape. Whatever way is easier, I find this way easier just by dropping in those points of where the knuckles are going to be. You're able to have a lot more control of it. All right, so now I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to say make adaptive skin after I knock my density down here and that down a little bit. There we go. So now I should have a hand all gangly like that. That's too gangly. Let's go back. It's too gangly. Adaptive skin. Let's go to density up. Let's see. Oops, there it is. Oh, that one's even worse. Back to that. All right, I guess I'll stick with this one. Okay, there's a lot of divisions on it. Oops. I'm going to smooth it out. So I'm using my smooth tool. I'm going to use my move tool also to then start reshaping the hand. I don't want it to be like that puffy because then it looks more like a glove. And you'll see how I'm just kind of going around to each piece. Now you could actually model a whole character this way, modeling the head, modeling the feet and the arms and the legs, and then attaching everything together. And then maybe this should all be just kind of moved in. And you see for a lot of this I'm just using the move tool just to kind of push these points where they need to be. Okay, now I can go through and kind of smooth it out. On my other one, when I added 4 fingers, it actually merged 2 of the fingers together. So I needed to go into the trim rectangle tool. And obviously it didn't do it here, but let's just pretend that it did right there. I would use Control Shift and trim that area out. And you can see how it basically put a notch inside it. So if it webs these fingers together, I would use a trim rectangle to separate them and then start smoothing that area out and reshaping the fingers. Or go back to the Z-spheres, space them further apart, and then do it. Okay. I'm not going to put in too much detail here. I just really want to get the overall gist of it, because when I put it on the character, it's going to basically rebuild itself anyway. So if I go in and start putting in like fingernails, when I attach the two, I may lose the fingernails because of how the tool works. So this should be good. I think a little bit less puff on the bottom of this hand. There should be good. And smooth it out. Okay, good enough. Let's get a wrist going in here. All right, so I'll stick with this. So I'm going to jump back to my character's body. You'll see on his, I didn't even put like fingernails or anything. I just kind of like left them like puffy. It lost it on this version of it, but he had like puffier fingertips. So I'm going to remove them just for this part. So I'm going to go to my trim rectangle, and I'm going to cut this off. Yes, 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 I know. I have too many divisions, so I'm going to delete all my lower divisions, and then do that. There we go. So now he lost his hand. I'm going to go to the pen tool. Oops. And now I should be able to pick that hand from my list. There. There's the hand. And then we will move the hand into a more appropriate spot. Oops, don't scale it. There we go, like that. It needs to be scaled. I'll scale it from the center here. Grab the green arrow. Grab the blue arrow. Maybe I want to pull his arm out too if I needed, you know, more room, whatever. There may be a difference, right? Like I might like the size of the hand, but I may not like where it's specifically positioned. Right. So I'll just blend those two in. I like that size. Notice the thumb's on the wrong side. If anyone caught that already, but the thumb's on the wrong side. So I'm going to go back to my draw tool. I'm going to go down to deformation. And then I should have a mirror inside here. There it is. And I just have to move it back to the other side. Whenever you're using this tool, you have this lock that allows you to move the pivot. So if you need to move it back to a better spot, you can also hit reorient or reset orientation, and it'll reset where the X, Y, and Z are. Sometimes it just gets kind of wonky. If you can believe it, they used to have a worse tool for doing this kind of stuff. That's good. Maybe a little bit of rotation here, a little bit of rotation there. All right, that's acceptable. All right, stop. All right, so now I'm going to go to my subtools, and in this version I don't have the eyes in here, but I'm just going to merge these two together. So I'm going to grab this one, I'm going to scroll down to merge, and I'm going to say merge down. And that'll take the two subtools and put them together. Okay, so now they're together. Now if you accidentally did that, you can go to split, and you can say split to parts, and any parts that aren't actually connected, it'll actually just separate them into two different subtools. So even though there's no undo, sometimes there's a workaround. Just so you can see it, I'll split to parts, hit OK. Sometimes you'll get extra pieces. Like I did this on a different version of this, and I ended up with like maybe like the back of his head somehow was missing or something. But it's no big deal, you just merge the stuff back together again. Okay, so merge down, yes. I'm just say always OK. Stop reminding me about it. All right, so now they're merged, but they're still two separate pieces. I'm going to go to my geometry. I'm going to go to my Dynamesh. I'm going to Dynamesh this. And now if I zoom in, and I go to my draw size. Oops, I'm not on draw, that's why I can't see my draw size. There it is. And I hold shift. Now I should be able to smooth this out or use my move tool to kind of blend these pieces in together a little bit better. Okay, so that's what's great about Dynamesh is it just merges those two pieces of geometry. Now it's all one piece. Everything's flowing nicely there. And I did lose a little bit of resolution because now I've added in all these extra points, and ZBrush tries to balance it all out. So I did lose a little bit of resolution, but you know, it's not a huge deal. So now I could go into the hand and I could do whatever I want to. I don't have symmetry on because I didn't put the hand on the other side. What I'm going to do eventually is just slice him and flip it over to the other side of this. Modeling the hand is no different than anything else. You start off rough just like before. Kind of keep things soft and fluid and flowing. Try to look at what kind of shapes you would have. Like for instance on your hand, on a human hand, the top is pretty flat and the bottom is pretty flat. But the rounding happens right there. So it's not like a perfect circle, it's more like a oval, right? That's how the finger is. And then the same thing here. There's actually like a little dip. I'm exaggerating it, but there's a dip that happens between each one of our creases there. Okay. Maybe I'll add a little bit of clay buildup here. Smooth that out some. And the process, again, is just the same thing. Just add clay, smooth it out. Add clay. Your thumb kind of like bunches here. My thumb bunches there. We modeled hands 1 year, and this guy modeled his fingertip like really weird. I said, that's not what your fingertip looks like. He's like, it's what mine looks like, and he showed me, and it was. It's pretty weird. Maybe some creases. So I'm using the Damien standard tool or the Dam standard tool. You can see the faces. You can see I don't have a whole lot of resolution in this, which is good because I can work pretty quick. If I had a lot of resolution here, it would be much more difficult to add the detail that I wanted to as quickly as I want to. Okay, and then once I'm ready for it, then I can start adding more detail. I think the Z intensity is still up too high. There we go, nice and smooth. And I think it helps too going in the correct direction for what you're drawing. So let's just jump over to the arm because it's a little bit easier to see on that. If I'm trying to add some more detail to this arm here, like I've kind of lost some of this geometry here, instead of me going left and right to kind of fill this in, I should go this way because that's the way the arm is, the direction I'm trying to add that geometry in. And then when I smooth it out, it'll help smooth it in the correct direction. Same thing with the fingers. When I added the information there, if I went this way on it, it's going to look weird because it's like flattening it out. Where this way, it's kind of flowing with the roundness of the arm or flowing with the roundness of the finger. So if you do something and you're just like it's not working out right, just try changing the direction that you're drawing it in. All right, rebuild my Dynamesh. There we go. All right. So there's his hand. That knuckle is huge. Holy cow. Oops. Smooth it out a little bit more. There we go. All right. So let's pretend that I'm satisfied with that arm. I could still tweak it some. Did I have? Oh, I did have my thing on, so it was like going crazy on that hand. I'm going to go to deformation. Nope. I'm going to go to geometry. There it is. I'm going to go to modify topology, and I'm going to say mirror and weld. And what that does, it just cuts it in half and flips it over. So now he's symmetrical again. This is good in case, too, you don't have symmetry on and you do something and you need that on the other side. You just hit that. Boom, there it is. Cool. So I have the hands in here. I have the lips in there. You'll see that I keep losing resolution in the lips. Like I push them in there so they actually have like a nice line there. The same thing with the nostrils. Oops. And I'll typically use like clay buildup for this kind of thing where I literally just push it in, right? Just kind of round that off. Maybe I'll use the move tool to kind of reshape how the nostrils are laid out because perfectly round looks weird. I'll use the Damien standard brush with alt clicked, and it'll actually, instead of pushing in and creasing a crease, it pulls it out. So you have like a nice ridge. So now I have this like ridge by the nose. And then I can kind of blend that in a little bit. Same thing here, same thing there, okay? And it's just part of, as you work with this tool, you're going to lose resolution. So you just have to be aware of, I keep losing it in the mouth. I'm going to stop playing with the mouth area and go to something else. And then when I'm ready for it, then I can add the mouth resolution and keep it, okay? All right. So what I would do at this point, I have the hands in here. I have the shape for the mouth, the nose, the eyes. I have some stuff on the back, obviously. I've gone through and added just a bit of detail just in some of these areas just to kind of break up like where the muscles would be. So these muscles flow straight down the leg like this. So I basically drew in some muscles that would go like this, and then for the calf, they kind of come out like that. So I just started shaping it so that it would flow in that correct direction, okay? For this one, I wouldn't want to go this way. When I when I get to this point where it's all like fleshed out, I go this way to kind of flesh it out and kind of get the shape in there. Then I use my blend tool to or my smooth tool to blur it in or to smooth it in. And then I can start creating some of these streaks that'll help kind of tie it in with the rest of the surface. And again, my Z intensity is way too low, so it's taking way too long to kind of smooth that out. Okay, so that just helps kind of separate some of these things. If you looked at your shin, sometimes you'll see like an actual, like here's the shin bone, and then there's like a piece of the muscle that's kind of sticking out from the side. So you may want to incorporate some of those things into your model. So if I go here and I just start incorporating, let's say that's the shin bone, right? I kind of blend it in so it doesn't look too obvious. And then I also push on the other side of this, like so, and start blending that in. I'm going to push here, start blending that in. I'm going to get kind of an indication of him having a shin bone there, okay? Maybe I need to go a little bit less, or a little bit pushed in on that side, and a little bit pushed in on this side. And you'll start to see some of that stuff coming out. It's not just about pulling stuff, it's a lot about pulling and pushing to get your shapes the way you want. I didn't do anything with the feet here, I just want to make sure they were flat. That was my big concern. Let me mirror this again because I have now a shin bone. Cool. If you decided like you had a huge movement, like I really want to take these arms and make them incredibly long, okay? You can use the mask tools that are in here. So mask circle, mask curve, mask curve pen, and then further down here. I'm just going to use this mask circle. I'll hit control, and then it basically, let me just spin around a little bit. I hit control, it lets me draw a shape. I can hold the space bar while I'm drawing and change where that shape is at. So I'm going to do this. Then if I switch to the move tool, you can see how I can move the opposite. So it actually masks off the opposite of the shape. That's no big deal because we just hold control and we click off here. And now we have that shape masked. And then we could pull the arm, let's say down here, pull the arm way over here, or wherever we want his arm to be, like that. And then I would control drag to deselect the mask. Make sure I'm back in draw. Control drag again to rebuild my stuff. I can then go through and maybe smooth this out, smooth that out. Let's control drag again. Is it rebuilding my stuff? No, it's not. Let me make sure my Dynamesh is still on. Oh, it's off. There we go. So I'll turn Dynamesh back on, and now we should be able to rebuild that and then kind of reshape what that looks like. My clay buildup, just so you can see, is like doing that. As it's trying to build clay, it's pulling from the other side, and I'm losing the shape of it. It's just too thin. So if I use inflate, now I can give it some thickness, and now I can use clay buildup on it with little issue. Maybe I can shrink this down some and it'll be better. There we go. Okay. Obviously, in this case, it doesn't really make sense for me to do that, so I'm not going to do that. Cool. So I can't see how many divisions I have in this. Right-click. No. There's another way you can see it. I just can't. My screen is not big enough to see everything. All right. So what I'll do after I get to this point of the arms are in a good spot, the hands are good, the mouth, whatever, I'll go through and just start adding in just sharp areas and soft areas. So that's why on the chest here, oops, not that, I have these, his pecs kind of come in, and there's like little crisp areas in there. So I went to the Damien standard, and I used that Alt, and I just drew a shape like that, okay? I kind of float it from here into that area, and then I just use my smooth brush and just kind of soften it out. Right here where it meets the rest of it, I soften it more so it looks like it's kind of flowing right into that surface. Okay? It's an alien, you can do whatever you want. This is a really skinny alien, so he has like, oops, these areas here that are maybe ribs. I think I want to go a different way, like that. There we go. That, I'll kind of smooth those in. I think I'll shrink this down too and maybe just kind of dimple this. Maybe dimpling it would be better here. There Sometimes my tablet just doesn't want to line up with where I'm at. So it keeps jumping back to that spot. I don't want to go to that spot. This spot. There we go. There we go. And I'll kind of blend that in a little bit more. All right, so now he has these like marks on him, kind of like ribs or something. I don't know. Same thing here. I may want to also use the standard brush. And I could pull out like ribs. If I don't like how round that is, I can go to my focal shift and change that. If I go this way, it'll be more rounded. Not really what I want. If I go the other way, it'll be more subtle. Okay, so again, you can kind of play with these tools too, just to see, you know, get different results with them. Maybe I'll push this part in. There we go, that's good. And then I'm going to crisp this up here. That's too deep. Let's go take the intensity down. And kind of blend that in. There we go. And then once I'm done, again, I can just jump down to that modify topology, mirror and weld. And now I have those kinds of things on there. Okay, so lots of little details you can add to it, and it's still at a good phase where it's not like too heavy. So now I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, well I have a good amount of detail in here. I'm ready to go to that phase of adding the hyper realistic detail. So I'm going to go to my Dynamesh, pull this up to a good number, control drag. I should be able to see when that window pops up here. Did it already do it? I wish I could see what my stuff was. Nope, nope, nope. If I hover my mouse over, there we go. 295,000 polygons. I want more. Let's go back to Dynamesh. Let's pull this up. Let's do our polish and project. That'll give us more divisions because it does a better job of laying them out. Yep, so I'll get 3.5 million points. When we get to this level, basically we're going from adding that low-end detail to adding in the high detail. Basically, like if we zoomed in, you can see skin pores. That's the stage we're at. Okay, you may go into a stage in between, but that's going to be the next step in this case. He doesn't have a belly button either because they're not born. They're just created, I guess. He also doesn't have nipples. He does have to breathe and eat, though. All right, there we go. Cool. All right, so now I have 3 million divisions, which means when I start adding in these kinds of shapes, I have a whole lot of points there that I can really play with. So when I go in here to the nostrils and I start pushing these in, let me turn my symmetry on. When I start pulling this area out, I'm going to get a lot more resolution there. So I'll push that in. There we go. That's good. Whoops, too much. And let's go there. So you can see now this detail will stick because I'm at a high enough resolution where I have enough points that it won't do that. It helps when you do a mouth, obviously, to have a nice crisp line for where the mouth is going to go. But to also do that alt trick with the Damien Standard and kind of outline, let's say, the lip here, and then kind of soften it up. It'll really help kind of pull that lip into, the top lip into existence. That's good. And then I would need to go a little bit further on this. I'm being aggressive with this. I'm kind of like back and forth really hard with my tablet because I really want that lip to read good. And a little bit softer on the end. There we go. All right. Cool. Now let's go into the high detail stuff. So if I use the regular standard brush and I go to my alpha, in here I can load in basically a picture of a black and white image of skin. So if I look over here at this one, this is like scales or something, right? This one is like dots. There's another one that's skin. Where did that one go? There it is. This one is more like skin texture. So if you were to look at your skin really close, you might get something like that or something like this. There's also, I think I mentioned this before, skin texture, ZBrush. There's ZBrush Central where you can download stuff. Pixelogic's download tools right there you can download. And you may also find these kinds of things, which are just alpha maps that people have around that you could also utilize. Okay. So they have, like, sometimes people have a free pack of skins, and you can download those things and use them. So I'm going to load in ones that I have here. ZBrushes. These are ones, during Christmas, this guy had a sale, 20 bucks for a lifetime membership to his ZBrush brushes. You get all of them for life. And these are like all the ones that he's put out so far. So I'm going to go here, alphas, and I'm just going to grab all these. There we go. So now I go into this, and then here's all the different textures that I have. So let's say that one. Okay. So all I did was I have this skin alpha, which is the black and white image. I have the standard brush, and now right now it's on dots. I'm going to set it to freehand, or not freehand. I'm going to set it to spray, and then I'm going to do a little test. So I'm going to click and drag, okay, and then see. That could work. Definitely could work. If I zoom in, though, I'm actually getting like each one of these is one of those. That looks weird. So I think I'm going to go to my spray here and maybe take the scale a little bit further down, maybe take the flow a little bit further down, and take the placement a little bit further up. Let's see. Yep, I think that Z intensity is also maybe too high, so let's pull that down. Now it's too low. Find a happy medium. I think my brush could probably be a little bit bigger too. So you can see how I'm starting to get some of this texture on there. So what I'm doing is I'm going to do two passes. My first pass is just overall texture. I want to go through and just set up basically like an overall, it's not perfectly smooth. If you have areas that are super smooth, they should be intentionally super smooth. The back of his head should probably be pretty smooth. The front of his face is probably not, right? His lips are probably smooth, or not smooth, but have a different texture than this. So I'm just kind of going around, just giving him a random texture all over in these main areas here, just so he has something. If I want to switch brushes, that's not a huge deal either. I just switch my alpha. That's wrinkles, skin. Maybe that one. That one would be a good one. Oops. And this is, again, too intense. Depending on the alpha channel, you might have something that's just too intense. There we go. And I'm not going, you know, I'm not really, I do care, obviously, where things go, but I'm not being too particular about making sure every single spot gets filled. Eventually it will, or eventually it'll be good enough that it works. I'm not going to put it on the very, very bottom of his feet because I don't need anything there. Neck. There's his arm, his hands. Alright, so now he has just this overall texture to him. And if I zoom in really close, you can really see that. Again, I could have held Alt and pushed some of those spots in too. That's definitely a possibility, right? Hold Alt, drag it. And now I have, again, just another level of dots inside there just to break up the skin so it's not all one texture, all one flat smoothness. All right, So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my alphas, and let's say that I have these wrinkles here. If I started using this on him, let me make it a little bit more intense so we can see it. This is like way too much, right? That looks really odd. I'm going to use, instead of spray, I'm going to use drag rect. And what this allows me to do is just drag in exactly where I want that shape to be. So maybe not there, because that's an odd spot, but maybe here on his head, he has these like veins right there. And I'll make this even a bit bigger. Try to make it look like they're kind of connected. Like that. There you go. And they're on both sides. I'll even draw a little one right there. That's kind of neat. Okay, now this is still just modeling. So this is actually pulling out vertices. We haven't done any texturing. Even though my guy's colored, there's no actual texturing done to this. Okay, for the lips there, if you looked at lips, oops, get closer. They have more of these lines like this. I'm going to shrink my brush down. I'm going to zoom in. Come on. There we go. And I'm just going to drag these like lines. Make sure I hold down Alt so the lines go inward and not outward. Same thing on the lower lip. If you do too much, obviously you can smooth it out. You can hit undo. Just redraw over the top of it. And so you'll see I'm giving him a lot more personality now because I have these fine lines that I could add to it. This obviously basically changes a lot of his shape there. There's also these dots that I think are kind of cool too. That's cool. And they're basically just black and white images. So if you make a black and white image, whatever is white is the most bump, wherever is black is the least. So you can use this kind of stuff to create your own if you wanted to. And obviously you want to vary the sizing of them and the position of them. If you don't vary the size, everything is exactly uniform, it's going to turn out looking very fake. That's cool. What else do we have in here? Some will look good, some won't. So this one won't. Can't even see that one. Let's take the intensity up. There you go. That's such a weird one. Again, some of these are appropriate for what we're doing, some of these are not. That's like a weird thing. Yep. Skin, yes, yes, yes. Here's a scaly one, so let's say I'm going to go down to his feet. Be careful when you do these ones like this, so that they kind of look like they're flowing from one to the other. A little bit too careless there. That's good. Nope, undo. Nope, those look like high heels. We're going to get rid of that. There was another one in here that's pretty good, that one. Alright, and same thing, I would kind of vary this so that I have little ones and big ones in here. Okay, so the idea is that if you find a cool image, try using it. It doesn't hurt. You can also load brushes, so under the brush area I can say load brush, and all of these skins also came with a brush, so I can load that, and this is a specific brush that was configured for that specific alpha channel. So if I go here, you can see what it looks like. I didn't find the settings for those terribly good. So I was fine using the standard brush on it. Okay. So things to consider when you're doing this kind of work, the detail work, is look at areas that just need a little bit of extra detail just to make it feel a little bit more realistic. Oops, not there. So maybe like some lines around the mouth, maybe some lines around the eyes. Stop doing that. Why are you, oh, I think my hand was in the wrong spot. That's why I was jumping. Nope, it's just being stupid. And then you also want to watch out for symmetry. If you have something that's too symmetrical like that, it's going to look weird. So at some point you may say, okay, well, I'm going to turn off my symmetry. And then I'll just add a line here like this, and I'll add a line there like that. And the same thing here, and the same thing there. It'll help break up the surfaces so they don't, again, appear too symmetrical, because nobody is super symmetrical. Stop jumping. Cool. All right. So now we've gone through and laid out all the main texture or all the main detail work as far as the modeling goes. So it doesn't matter when you do this next part. You can still go back and add more detail if you want. But the next part of this, we're going to be adding the actual coloring. When I do this, I want to make sure I have enough divisions. This is 3.5 million. That's plenty of divisions. If I had 100,000, it wouldn't work as good. There's no UV layout in ZBrush. There is, but we don't need to use it, okay, because we're staying strictly in ZBrush. We're going to paint everything in here. It's poly painting, so the more points we have, the smoother our color is going to be, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this back to the standard brush. I'm going to turn off my Z add and turn on mRGB. So this is basically the same brushes I would use to sculpt are the same brushes I use to paint. It's just standard brush is now on this. It's no longer doing this stuff. I'm going to go down to here where my materials are, and I'm going to pick a base material to start with. So if I hover over these, you can see what the base materials look like. For something like this, you pretty much want to stick to something that looks like skin. So this default one, not default, but this polyskin one is a good one to go with because it gives you the same properties or similar properties to skin. There's another one over here like that's very close to a skin type texture. Obviously there's other ones you could definitely kind of explore with. Some of these like this that rely on reflection, you can paint all day, you're not going to get the color to come through because it's all reflection, okay? So look at sticking with maybe this polyskin. When you click on it, you pick a default color. Okay, so what color do I want my character to be by default? Let's say that. And then I go up to color, and then I say fill object. And what that does is it takes the color I've chosen, the material I've chosen, and as long as this mRGB is clicked, it fills both things. If I were to have not had that clicked, then I just hit RGB, it would have filled just the color, but kept the material fluid. So if I were to go over here and click on, let's say, this one, you'll see the material doesn't change because I'm no longer painting, or I have a material locked in. I can verify that by going over here and seeing this paintbrush. That means I have a texture I've started. If I check that off, now I'm back to where I was before. So this is Matte Cap Gorilla. Let's go back to polyskin. Let's make this sure this is mRGB. Let's pick our default color, right? And you can slide around here. It's a little bit silly, but how they use it, but slide around there to pick a different color. That might be kind of cool. And then we go to color and fill object. Okay. I don't have the eyes in this specific file, but it works the same way. I would have the eyes and I would do them. I'll show you on the eyes when I jump back to the other file. So now, the same way that I did the other one, we did an overall color, and then we came back and painted details. That's what we want to do. So even though he has an overall color right now, which is kind of this magenta color, I'm going to go in here and go to a dark magenta. I'm going to go to spray. I'm going to go to standard alpha. I'm going to take my RGB intensity. So now as we paint, we want to paint RGB, which is color, and we want to take this intensity down. Just like Photoshop, you don't draw at 100% opacity. You draw at a lower opacity and then build up to it, right? Same thing here. So I'm going to go into this. It's a little bit too light. I'm going to go into this. Oh, it's not this too bright. This is just way far away. Let's go to, just go to freehand, I guess. There we go. So I'm going in here and I'm just painting in splotches. Don't worry about it being super smooth right away. It's not going to be. Okay, so I'm going to say, let's say his stomach is really red right there. I'm going to go to some lighter colors. I'm going to paint some lighter colors over here. I could turn symmetry on as well while I paint. That's a definitely doable thing. Let's go there. And all I'm doing here is just basically dropping in some colors that I could then blend together. Okay, so let's say that that's good. It's a weird color combination. The eyedropper here is weird. You literally just drag this first color out here, and that will eyedrop your color. And then you paint. Then you eyedrop it again, and then you paint. And what you'll see is, just by doing this over and over and over again, you're able to create these blends between the different colors to create the color you're after. If maybe you go too dark in an area, well then just pick a lighter color and just lighten it up. There's no eraser, it's just paint on top of it. That's all it is. Drag this. Now the one that I had when I started the lecture, I did all that with a mouse. So I do it here with a tablet just so you can see it. But just keep in mind, you can still do all this stuff with a mouse. Get more of this red. I don't like how dark that is. Let's get rid of that. And what you'll see is as you start going around and as you start adding your color, you'll see areas where it's like, okay, this doesn't look very good. I need to really tweak this and adjust how this is being laid out. Let's take this down even further, I think. Oops. I just undid a whole bunch of stuff. There we go. I'm going to start lightening and blending this in more. There we go. So now I have that color on there, which is obviously more closer to, the color I was maybe going after. And then you'll see, just by doing it over and over and over again, eventually you'll hit that spot where it works. And as I approach this, I'm not trying to get this perfect at all right away. All I'm doing is literally just picking colors and painting it and seeing what happens. Picking colors, painting it, seeing what happens. There we go. So that looks pretty good like that. If I go back to, I don't know if I can, yeah. So you can see a little bit of the before and after of the color change. It's subtle, but it's there. Look at different areas of people of where their coloring is. So the lips are typically a different color. Don't go too crazy with any of that because then it'll look like lipstick, obviously. I'm going to go there and then maybe just lighten that up some. Let's go darker. And things that are in the shadow, I'm kind of darkening them a bit more And areas where it should be a bit lighter, things that are maybe facing upwards, I'm trying to give them a lighter color too. Even lighter. There we go. And then I'll start to go in here and then just start to blend some more. Okay, now if you get to a spot you're like, okay, I'm happy with the coloring, I want to add detail. Same thing. You can go over here and you can grab any of the brushes and you can add those details. If I go to these dots, I go to a really outrageous color like green there. I go, oops. When you can smooth, just make sure you're off the Z add when you smooth, otherwise you'll start smoothing the stuff out. And it's not smoothing very much, but whatever. So let's say I take these dots, I'm going to change this to a drag, and then drag these dots in here. I see no dots coming in. Oops, take the RGB intensity up, there we go. Now you can see how I can add basically any of those same alpha channels or ones that I create. I can just add my own right here. Now these are going to come off more like a paint because they're painted on top of the person versus being actually like modeled into it where it's like bumped out, right? So same thing here, maybe on the back I have some just mixed in colored ones. You'll see I have symmetry on still too. Okay, so you can go through and play with all of those. Now, another part of this that we'll spend a little bit more time on when we get to the rendering, I have a material on him, but how it's showing up is adjusted, is having the material adjusted. So I went under material here, and the stuff is not wonderful. But if you go to the specific ones, you can kind of play with it and see. So let me just scoot him over to the side. If I go under the material, I go down to wax modifier and I pull this down, you'll see how he looks more like solid. If I pull this up, he's going to look more translucent. Basically, like the skin, light hits the skin, it goes inside, it bounces around. That's wax. That's what they're signifying it as. And then you can play with some of the other settings if you wanted to tweak it. Sometimes you won't see a huge effect. Sometimes you will. For what we're doing in this, we don't really need to worry too much about it. You can also play with some of the modifiers here. Again, it sucks how they have the stuff laid out. It's not very visual or very descriptive of what anything does. So number one, we have cavity detection. All those little pits and things that we added to the skin, we want to make those a little bit more apparent. We can take this cavity detection up, and now we can see a lot more of those cavities that we added. If we go this way, they'll become less apparent, right? So all of these will help us kind of pull out the details that we added, and then the transition here again will help us kind of decide or show off how those are being displayed. Going this far down, you can really see all of them. Obviously it looks horrible, so I want to find a good happy number in there, something like that. There's also this intensity here, which is like the color intensity. There's also a B intensity, which is like the background color. There's some other stuff you can play with. I honestly don't know what most of those things do. I just kind of go in there, start messing with sliders until it looks good. For what we're doing in this, that's all we need. That's good. Okay. There's also under render, you may have to turn on under here, render properties. You may have to turn on shadows, so you can see shadows, or subsurface scattering, or wax preview if you want to see all those things. Okay. We'll get more into this thing when we get to the rendering part of it, but for just painting and kind of laying things out, that should get you a good amount of detail. And like I said, you can always go back if you decided, oh, I want to do something here. You can still jump back to the Z add, just make sure you turn off the RGB. And you can still add actual like geometry to them. You can still tweak things out. You just have to be aware of that, because if you go here and you do this, and then let's say you rebuild your Dynamesh, that might screw up the polygon order, which then screws up the vertices, which then screws up your texture. set this aside. While we're waiting for that. For the eyes, on mine, I'm going to use like more of a black mirror type eye or a opal like eye. There we go. Okay, not like that. Black opal. Like that. But it's going to be rounded. And not faceted. So it's going to be something like that color. If you want an actual like eye, you will need an eye texture. I recommend maybe getting one that you find online, like a royalty-free one, and then tweaking it or drawing your own inside Photoshop if you want an actual like iris and pupil and all that. Putting a human eye on a creature may look kind of funny, okay? So just be aware that even if you find this one is like, wow, that's a great looking eye, you put it on yours, that's going to look weird or could look weird on your specific one. Okay? So I'm just going to hit escape on this. It's not going to crash. It's not going to crash. See, it didn't crash. Okay. So let me open up my other guy here. I'm going to save this one as. Oops. The saving directory is like off. It's like always like saving in some random folder. All right, let's go back to recent. And let's go to, I think this one has its eye. I lied. That one doesn't have his eye. I know this one does. Alright, so I'm going to clear the document here so I can get rid of those other two guys. Alright, so to get the eye color here, you can see I just have this like black material. I'm going to remove the color from them, so they're gone. I'm going to go to either eye, it doesn't matter which one I go to first. Eventually I'm just going to clone it, that way they're exactly the same. Okay. I go down and pick a material, just like before. Again, try to find something that matches what you're trying to do. So if I did that, obviously it would be like shiny, right? Droplet, chrome. Let's do that one. All right, I'm going to say RGB or mRGB. Make sure I'm on a white color for now. And then I will go to color and say fill object. There we go. So now that object has that material assigned to it. Now I want to bring in a texture and drop it onto the eyeball. So I'm going to go under my textures. I'm going to go to import. And I found a picture of an eye I downloaded. Then I'm going to go under texture. There it is. Here's the eye. So I'm going to pick it. And then I'm going to turn on add to spotlight. And then it automatically turns spotlight on. Now what this is basically just like a projection. So just like when we were in Substance, we projected a texture, same thing. So that eye is basically like floating in space. The hotkeys you'll need to know is Z to turn that display on and off and let you paint, and then Shift Z to turn spotlight on and off. Okay. So in here I'm going to scale this down. Actually, I'm going to hit Shift Z and get really close to the eye. Okay. Then I'm going to hit Z. There it is. And if I go to the opacity on here and crank this down, I can see through that to see exactly where this is. I can also left click, right click out here and move the thing out of the way. And then it wasn't doing that before. It's moving it in that. So left clicking allows me to move this. Left clicking on the picture allows me to move the picture. So I can get this kind of lined up, get it scaled accordingly. Let's move the picture over. That's good. Same thing with the divisions. If my sphere only has, let's say, 100 divisions, as I paint, that's a lower res texture than if I have 1,000,000 divisions on it. Okay. So now I'm going to take my opacity back up because it's in a good spot. I'm going to make sure my RGB is at 100. Make sure this is on freehand. Make sure this is on that. I'm going to hit Z, and then I'm just going to paint. Now, you can't see it doing its thing, but if I hit Shift-Z, you can't see a single thing because I'm on the wrong eye. It's that eye. There it goes. So now I'm just painting that eye in there. Let's go back to that. Let's take this opacity down. And then we're just painting right on top of this. Now you'll notice that the color is not overriding at 100%. It's still kind of like this pinkish color. And again, you can see it looks weird with him having that like human eye. If it's in the wrong spot, I just paint on top of it. It's not a big deal. Just Shift-Z, get it lined up again. Paint on top of it. Shift-Z gets rid of it. There we go. I jump back to the material, and this is where I would then start playing with these things just to see which one of these is causing that magenta to come in. It's not that one. Nope. Let's click and drag hue. It could even be just that material. That's white. Nope. Kind of fixes it. Saturation, intensity. Let's see the environment. So in some of these, they're actually using an environment to create their stuff. It doesn't look like this one is, though. Typically, it's mapped under like S2. Let's see that, though. Right, nothing seems to be changing this one. Oh, wait, there we go. Cool. So that monochromatic B A, turn that up, and then turn this intensity A up. Now I got more of the color from my original material. But again, you can see it looks definitely odd. So I would paint this typically just with a regular brush. Just this, pick a color, and then just paint on top of it. If I want to add some variations to it, maybe I'll add a little highlight here. Take this intensity down. Maybe I'll hit the corners. And then maybe I'll go back to like a solid black, take the draw size, oops, the focal shift out. Let's do draw rectangle. No, that's why. There we go. And then I will smooth that out a little bit. Now I have some sort of eye there. Doesn't look great, but for now it works, right? Oh, so on drag rectangle. There we go. Okay. So now for the other eye, I'll just take this one and delete it. Yes. I'll take this eye and duplicate it. And then I'll just go down to deform and just say mirror. And turn this eyeball on, and there we go. Okay, so now I have two eyes, and then his body, obviously. Okay, so that should take you through kind of finishing up the modeling part of it and getting some texture on there. The next part will be that I'll show will be the posing of them if you want to do that. Depending on your model and how it works out, it could be a somewhat simple process. On this guy, he was giving me trouble, but I'll show how to do that, and then obviously how to render it out. When we render them, we'll do like you saw, like the 3 different characters. Boom, 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 we'll do that. And then we'll also do like a close-up of, let's say, the head. Like a nice angle shot. Cool. Let's save him again. Millions of versions. Make sure you have multiple versions. Don't use the same one. All right, questions on that yet? Yes, ma'am.
How would you go about like fur if you wanted to add that?
I would go to him here. And then I would use my mask brush. Mask where is it? Mask. Curve pen. No. Yes. There we go. Let me turn my symmetry on too. I did have it on. Okay. So I'm just using my mask pen right now, and this will isolate like where his hair is going to be. There you go. Sure. Right. Control Alt will let us subtract, so if we need to subtract, we can. There you go. And then we come down to fibers. And then we say preview. And there we go. And then we can go into the modifiers here. And just like the materials, you can play with the materials. Now, it's in preview mode, so all of this stuff is live. So if I change the length of this, it'll change it on the fly. Like that. Let's see. If I change the twist, there it is. If I change the gravity, it'll pull it down more. If I change the base color, let's say I go with the dark blue. And the tip, I go with a bright blue. Come on, there we go, a little bit. I think I need to add a little bit more blue to that tip there. There we go. That's fine. Yeah, you can also add texture. I don't need that. Segments. The more segments you have, the smoother it'll be as far as like how it rounds. With less segments, if you look at, you can kind of see it up there. Let me zoom in, maybe get a better angle of it. If you look at these top pieces, you can see how they're jagged. So if I take that and I lower the segments, there's less segments for each hair, so they become even more jagged. If I take the segments up further, it's a lot smoother, so hence it's able to round out a lot more. So then you may have to play with gravity to find a happy medium with where those are at. Okay. There's also, I believe, if I go to these Lightbox fibers, you can pick one of these as like a starting point and then go from there. So if my character has pod strings, sure. That loads in the pod strings as a default. And then I would just hit accept when I'm ready and then say yes. And then what that does is it locks it in and it creates a new subtool, which is the hair. And then that's now just geometry that we can then render out. There's also brushes inside here, which are grooming brushes. So I forget if I do that after or not. Let's see, blower brush, there's a brush. Yeah, so after it's all in there, after you've accepted it, then you can go here and kind of push them in the correct direction to get it. Now, you have not a whole lot of control inside here just because of how it's laid out. So it does take a lot of patience and playing with it over and over and over again to get it to work correctly. But all of these grooming brushes will do that. You can also use the regular brushes. So if I just use like the regular move, I've hit the maximum for this apparently. I can actually just use the move brush and just move these points around to get it to where I want it to be. With the character, you could do it with a bunch of divisions. It doesn't affect the character any. It's just being able to select more of those faces exactly where you want it to be. If you look at some of the other things that people do, sometimes they'll go into like Maya and they'll do the hair in there, save it as a polygon to bring it in. Or they'll take the character into Maya and do it there. That's acceptable too, or done too. It's just, either way you can do it. It's just, again, just a matter of patience to be able to lay it out exactly how you want it using all of those things. It's also a neat thing just to add as another layer is if you had like some sort of even soft like facial hair in there, because you don't have to do any grooming on it. It literally is just kind of like grab an area, add those the fibers to it, like let's say his chest. Right. Oops, make sure I'm on the character. There we go. I have to clear off my old mask, and then I'll just draw in some hairs here. There we go. And under the fibers, I'll just find one that's kind of close. That's close. It's a lot, right? And then we'll change the length. There you go. Yep, fine. And then we'll take the maximum fibers down. And then we can go down to the color area and adjust these colors. And there's probably a width somewhere in here. Probably there is a width somewhere in here. That's like all their tools. Like I just want something visual that I can play with. That's why people run away from it. There it is. Width. So this is the start and the end of that hair, like how wide it is. There we go. So let's say I'm going to accept that. There we go. And so now he has these like little wispy hairs on his chest, right? If we don't want them, we can just turn them off. Maybe. Oh, because I was still selected on. There we go. Yeah, so those little things too can be very effective, just adding an extra level of things. Things like eyelashes, all of that. And you could even model just an eyelash and just duplicate it all over, especially because it's a lot easier to control just doing it that way. Cool. Anything else?